Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Thomas Jefferson said, "If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done." Benjamin Franklin said, "Without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning." Basically, get off your duff, get to working, you've got dreams, you've got goals, you've got to do what it takes to get them. Like, subscribe, comment, show what your opinion is. Let me know if you like what you've seen. And I thank you for your support. So, we just had the Chevron ruling overturned by the Supreme Court. Major ruling. It's Loper Bright Enterprises B. Raimondo and Relentless Incorporated B. Department of Commerce. And it overturned an 84 decision, Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense Council. And what that said was, basically, is that the government didn't have to follow the law anymore, and that they could claim that their employees were experts and they could do whatever they wanted to do. Democrats are up in arms. Of course, their propaganda machine is up in arms over it. But it required the whole thing was because the agency had required the herring industry to pay for the cost, $710 a day. Well, this overturned it. The didn't overturn a law. It overturned a court ruling, and it said that they were supposed to be following the law that was already in place. Well, this does more than what everybody's claiming. In the First Amendment, it says that we have a right to petition the government. We've been losing that right slowly and definitively. Why? Because, yes, you can petition your member of Congress. Unless you're some big donor, you're not going to get heard. And it's not like that most members of Congress can actually get the government to do anything. So your next bet is to try to get whichever part of the government to do their job by following the law and not their own edicts. Well, that hasn't been happening. So the only way that we've been able to petition the government and actually get heard is via the court system. This has been our only way to do it. And that's what I think has been brought back with this. So we're going to discuss this part of the Constitution, namely the Bill of Rights. Petitioning the government is our right. Being able to get the government to listen to us is our right. How many people actually feel like they're being heard by this government anymore? Seriously. You have people on both sides of the political aisle that don't have major issues, but parts of the government are hurting them by their actions. We have people in jail for stuff that they really should not be in jail for the amount of time that they're in jail for. You have young folks that make mistakes. They get involved with drugs. Young people get involved with drugs. I know I did when I was younger. I have no problems admitting to it. Thankfully, I didn't end up in prison in a system that is broken. But our system now is one predicated on making money for certain corporations. That's just our criminal justice system. We have the deaths of so many young folks by illegal immigrants now. We already have enough deaths in this country. We have people killing each other over the silliest of reasons. We don't need to let an open border happen and having these folks coming in here and killing people. We've got to deal with their own people. We can solve the problem of illegal immigration. That's not that difficult of something to solve compared to how you're going to deal with a person that loses their mind and goes and do something violent. That's not being heard. I mean, it's being heard loud, but it's not being taken care of. Let's put it that way. Our grievances are not being paid attention to in this country. Now, there are certain issues that are having laws passed all the time because it gets votes, but other issues aren't. Plus, you have a government that this administrative state, this bureaucracy that was created under Woodrow Wilson that has done nothing but grow. And it's financing these unions that are pushing issues that are hurting Americans all over this nation. Why? Because these union employees are creating regulations that are hurting small businesses. Don't think that this is hurting large businesses. Why? Because ever since the beginning of this country, you have had those people who have their own Congress folks. When you're rich, you have access. But the common everyday person does not have that kind of access. And this is violating our First Amendment right. Think about that for a second. We have a First Amendment right to petition the government. But we're not having it happen. We're not having it allowed. Even if you can get through to somebody at your congressperson's office, how often do they actually do anything about what you have to say? Or let's say it's a particular part of the executive branch, Department of Interior or Department of Homeland Security or any of those. How often can you actually have a chance to talk to somebody in those areas and actually get something done? Talk about being a veteran. How often do you hear about veterans getting the shaft from the Veterans Administration? This is what's going on in this country. And the Chevron ruling is taking away some of the power of the bureaucrats who aren't doing things by law. They're just creating regulations that are hurting businesses, individuals, period. Some of what they're doing is supposedly altruistic, but for the most part, we're not being heard when they create these regulations that go against the laws. They're creating their own new laws, even though they're not passed by Congress. They're created by some person sitting in an office somewhere who's protected by civil service rules and by union rules that don't have to see what the effects are. And this needs to change. And thankfully, that's what this ruling has done. Now, this all sounds like I'm trying to come up with some kind of liberal dribble or an extreme right-wing talking point somewhere in there. But what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter what your politics are. You're going to have some concern in your life if you're trying to do something and the government has some regulation that is going to harm your interest. No, the government should not rule your life. If you believe that, there are other countries in this world that are more than willing to take away your freedom. This government was created for freedom. Not freedom for the government, but freedom for the people. We do not need government bureaucrats taking away our freedom every time that they have some wild hair up their rumpus. There comes a point where the people should be listened to far more than they're listened to. And it gets to the point that the people are getting tired of it. And everybody's going, well, there needs to be impeachment, and there needs to be this and that. No. They followed the Constitution on this. They followed a law that was on the books. All of these rules and regulations that the government is setting up is actually against a law that is in place. And it is also in our Constitution about our rights. But we have so many rules and regulations that are not backed up by law that constantly we get told, oh, well, it's just No, it's not extending anything that was passed by Congress 9 times out of 10. Actually, I would say 99 times out of 100. It doesn't follow any law that was passed by Congress. I'm of the belief that when you turn 18 in this country, you should be allowed to smoke a cigarette. You should be allowed to take a drink. For that matter, I think that you should be allowed to do a lot of things that we aren't allowed to do. Why we're not allowed to is because we have a nanny state, bordering on a police state, in my opinion. We give power to these police to do whatever they want to do, and if they go too far, they claim qualified immunity, and they don't have anything done to them. We have government bureaucrats that constantly screw up, and yet nothing is done to them. But if you're an everyday citizen, get caught with a joint in some of these states. Say the wrong thing at the wrong time because you're a little upset, and they find a way to put you in jail. It's bad enough that we've got Alphabet and Meta sitting there censoring what we can say on their platforms. It's bad enough that we have people that have gotten into power not because we voted them in, but because they got hired and then they get the big head. It's time that we fight for our freedom, and I am glad that the Supreme Court decided to actually fight for it with us. Look, bureaucratic system is not the way for our government to be. Our government should be lean and smart. Instead, it's bloated and tyrannical. The government, our only way to deal with it, to redress our issues, is by suing the government. And that's an expensive proposition no matter who you are. So, this is the one and only way that we've got. And if it's being blocked, no. And don't get me wrong, there are so many other things that need to be fixed, but I think this is one of the ways that it needs to get fixed. Another way is to get rid of qualified immunity. Another way is to do some tort reform. There's so many things, but this is a good start. This is a good thing. Quit thinking these liberals need to quit thinking this is a bad thing. Civil rights and freedom, which they should be fighting for because that's where the word liberal comes from, is liberty. They should be thanking the court for this, but instead they're upset because they've been told, oh, the government's supposed to control your life. No, it is not. And I am glad that we have some freedom given back to the people, because this is our only way to petition the government to actually make some changes. This is just some food for thought for you. But this is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day, and think about what I just said.